So hello and welcome back to the Journey Beyond Yourself Summit. Today, joining us, we have the amazing Terri Britt. Welcome, Terri.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. I know you're a busy woman and it's evening for you now, so thank you so much. I'm just going to introduce you and then we'll get stuck in. So you are former Miss USA, but now you are a spiritual coach, intuitive healer, speaker, and love expert. You're also the founder of Women Leaders of Love, as well as the former radio host of Leading with Love, former TV news anchor for Movie Time, known as the E! Channel. You're also the award-winning author of The Enlightened Mum, and your Journal of Awakening, Message Sent, and your newest ebook, Women Leaders of Love, How to End the #1 Massive Mistake Women Make and Unleash Your Greatest Act of Service. So amazing work. For 20 years, you've been guiding people to raise their worthiness quotient, to get off the hamster wheel of stress and struggle, which, you know, we could all do with more of, so that they open up to receive with grace and ease the pace, love, and happiness they deserve. So I know you've been on shows, all the big ones, Today, NBC, Fox National, Good Day Atlanta, and now the Journey Beyond Yourself Summit. Thank you for being here.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you for that very nice introduction. And yes, this is equally as important as anything else, because everyone who's watching right now, we just want to help you see that you are worthy and that you deserve all the love and the nurturing and the support that you want. And we're going to show you how to do that today.
Yay! Yes. And I know that you've done so much to help people really see their gifts and worthiness in life. And now you have a special place in your heart for really helping women specifically. So we'll get to that. But let's hear a little bit about you. From Miss USA to spiritual coach, and you know, I know that, excuse my dog barking there, and I know we were just chatting offline and you were saying you've just done a radio show with somebody in a very conservative area of America, and you were asked about energy healing. So you're bringing this other side of life to the forefront. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get here?
Well, as a kid, I saw my dad having more fun. My mother felt suppressed, so I decided I wanted to be like my daddy. I attached my energy to his, and so what that meant for me was I got to go out and be successful. I've got to work really hard, just like daddy does. And I got on a hamster wheel. I continually was trying to win every accolade. My life was a competition. I mean, how many of us that are women do we attach ourselves to our dad's way of being? And I talked to so many women who have done this. They're like, oh my gosh, that's my story. I did exactly that. Well, I did it to the point where it drove me into the ground. I felt so much lack. I felt always stressed out. And that stress and that deep desire to keep winning at life. And let me tell you, I was winning a lot of stuff. I was second in my class in school. I went to college on scholarship. I mean, I was getting all of these accolades, miss this, miss that in high school and middle school. I mean, just everything. But no matter what I did, I felt as if it was fleeting. I'd have a moment and then it would feel like, okay, I got to do it again. It was almost like an addiction.
Always chasing.
Yeah, always chasing, always being on that hamster wheel, and being addicted to having people tell me that I was okay, that I was lovable, or that I was likable, because I didn't feel it on the inside. So this made me an emotional mess. I mean, can you relate to that? Have you ever felt that way, where you just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm working so hard and it's not filling me up, and instead it's making me stressed out? Have you ever felt that way?
Yes, and I don't know anybody that's never felt some degree of that, right? And I love when you said at the beginning that you wanted to be like your dad, so you went after that. But I also think there's an awful lot of people who perform in the same way, have the same results because they want the approval of their dad. So two slightly different motivations, but going to the same end. And
And mine was the same way too, just so you know. I attached myself to my dad. Daddy would say you can be anything what you want to be, where mom felt like there was more rules about you need to act this way because she was living by that old paradigm that women should suppress themselves. So when daddy would say you can be anything you want to be and you can do all of these things, well, the more I did, my belief was is that I would get more of that love. So it's exactly what you're saying.
yes,
Exactly what you're saying.
yes.
So to go back to the story, I found myself, doing this craziness. I followed my boyfriend to a college when I was heading to school. He was a little bit older than I was. And I wanted to get into broadcasting. That had always been my dream. But I went to a college that didn't have a broadcasting department because I was trying to make him happy. I was living by all these good girl rules. Can you imagine? I had two voices in my head. My dad saying, be anything you want to be. Oh, I'm going to go be a broadcaster. But my mother's voice saying, no, you need to do this. You need to take care of everybody else. And it's not so much that she said it. It's just that's the way she lived, that, she denied herself. And both mom and dad did, but dad at least seemed like he was having more fun. So when it came to going to college, I followed my boyfriend to this school and it didn't even have a broadcasting department. And that's what I wanted to major in, which was crazy, right? That's really screwed up. But that's what I learned growing up. That's what you do, right? You suppress yourself. Well, I found myself so angry in college. Oh my gosh. I was always crying. I was working hard to be on the dean's list. I was constantly upset with my boyfriend because he was having a lot of fun and he wasn't filling me up. I mean, to the point where I was trying to beat him up and I put my fist in his kitchen window one day. I mean, I was really a basket case. And so the second semester of my sophomore year of college, I was sitting at home talking to a friend on the phone and talking about how much I hated school. And he said, don't go. And I said, I have to. And he said, says who? And in that moment, it was if I don't even know. It was like a washing over me that says who. Went in and told my mom and dad, and I left school. And it was so funny because immediately when I left school, my apartment rented without any effort. I got a job. I moved home. I got a job. I mean, everything was flowing. I was no longer in this tug of war about what I needed to be doing. I was listening to my heart and there was this divine flow. Well, let me tell you, all of a sudden, I'm selling shoes. This woman comes in who I start talking to, and I decide she was a former Miss Arkansas, and I decide to go into the pageant. My mother made my gown. I had short brown hair. I won Miss Arkansas, and 2 weeks later, left for Miss USA, was there for 2 weeks. I was considered the underdog because, again, I had short brown hair. All these girls had been trained. I had no training. And then in top 12, Bob Barker says, what do you do in Cabot, Arkansas, population 4,000 on a Saturday night? And I sat there and talked about drinking beer and dipping skull in the back of a pickup truck. And then I won.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right? But what was so interesting is I won, but I really didn't receive the crown that night. Again, those little good girl rules came back to me. And I actually considered giving the crown back because I was so concerned about how it was going to mess up my boyfriend's life. I was going to be shipped to New York and he was going to be left in Arkansas. So all I could think about was I'm screwing up his life. So I couldn't really receive the crown. I won it, but I couldn't claim it. I didn't feel worthy. So we ended up eventually breaking up, just so you know. And it was like, I didn't marry this kid. It was all this emotional angst. And it was like, that relationship quickly ended. But I found myself when I got into the television industry, I couldn't break through my glass ceilings. I mean, some people would say, are you kidding? You were the news anchor for Movie Time, what's now the E channel, which is worldwide. But I would find that if I was to go out on an audition, maybe wanting a bigger job or more visibility, it would come down between me and another person. And then that person would get the job. So I felt like I couldn't break through my glass
Yeah.
ceilings. And this just kept me on that hamster wheel, right?
Mm.
Well, then I left everything to become a wife and mom. And that's when I really discovered I had a lot of anger issues. I found myself trying to make my kids be good, trying to prepare them for the future. I really truly believed I was doing the loving thing for
Yeah.
them, that I was preparing them, trying to get them to act a certain way and be a certain way and make straight A's. And I was doing this mostly with my stepson, who was a little older, and then I had my two girls. Every time I would struggle with him, I could not stand myself. I felt like this is not who I want to be. But I really thought, Sally, that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing as a wife and mom. I thought I was supposed to make everything okay for them and then deny myself. And so what I found was that I just got angrier and angrier and angrier, to the point where I really could not stand myself. And then in 95 my dad died, and I was looking at his life and realized that he was really screwed up. He had lost everything in bankruptcy, became an alcoholic, and he was the man I attached myself to, right? So I realized that this hero that I had created in my mind was just human, and he had a lot of judgment and pain in his life, and he really couldn't receive our love. And I knew that I was becoming like him. I wasn't an alcoholic, I wasn't drinking, but it was that same kind of mentality. So I had to wake up and I said, no more. I'm not doing this. I knew I was perpetuating a cycle for my family. And that's when I said, that's it. Well, when you say that's it, I'm ready for a healing. I'm ready to be love for my family. I don't want to be this old paradigm of what love is, because the old paradigm said denying yourself equals love, which is what we women have been doing for a long time, right? And even the men do it, but they watch it from their mamas, because you think of the mamas as the nurturers, right? So we learn this a lot of times from our mothers. Not everybody, but typically that's what happens. And so I just said, I don't want to be this anymore. And as soon as I said I want to be something different, my therapist said, you need to get into meditation. I ended up at an energy school, and the next thing you know, I'm learning about energy. I'm learning about the subconscious mind and how our mind holds 95% of the beliefs that we run in our life, and we don't even know we're there, and that these beliefs create feelings, and these feelings create vibrations, and that whatever vibration we're emitting is what we're going to attract to us. And so what the big aha came is that I realized I was angry because I had been performing. I had been living at this lower level vibration, and even though I was attracting things to me, I really couldn't receive them. It was that battle. Okay, that battle again of my dad saying you can be anything you want to be, and then the other side of my mom going, well, you need to be good, keep your voice quiet, don't rock the boat. I mean, that was really the way she lived her life, and she expected that of me.
Yeah.
So as there was this constant battle of, can I really receive, can I really have the abundance that I want in my life and receive it and feel good about it and not feel guilty about it, right? Because so often when something shows up, we feel guilty. And I have been a master at having amazing things show up at my life and then push them away
Yeah.
because I didn't have permission to receive.
Yes.
So that's been my work over the last 20 plus years of coaching people and really studying, why do some things show up and why do some things not? And then sometimes when they do show up, they slip away and people say, well, am I sabotaging myself? Am I sabotaging myself? Because you hear that a lot, right? Am I sabotaging? What's happening? And so I really made it my mission. Consciously, it wasn't like I was thinking, I'm going to make this my mission. It's just been revealed to me that this is the soul contract that I signed when I came into this lifetime to work through, because it is so important for people to understand that their worthiness is determined by themselves, not by the people around them. And for me, and so much of what our society teaches is that your worth is determined by the people around you.
Yeah.
So it's not. That only creates more pain and suffering. And so for me, when I was always performing, trying to win that love and approval, what was happening energetically is I was living at a low worthiness quotient. Even though I looked like I had it all,
Yeah.
Even though in my conscious mind I was saying, yeah, I can do that. In my subconscious mind, I was feeling like, no, I'm not worthy. Didn't even know I felt that way, but I would just staying on that hamster wheel, trying to win love and approval was me taking a stand and saying, I am not worthy. And
Yeah.
because that was the vibration that I was emitting, then I would attract things to me that felt hard. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel valued. Even though I would have things show up on the inside, I wasn't feeling that way. So I made it my mission to really look at that and see, how can we shift this? How can I shift it? And knowing all along that whatever I was doing was going to be a message for other people to heal.
Yeah.
I just knew that inside of myself.
Yeah. Thank you, Terry. Thank you for sharing your personal story. And I mean, one of the gifts of doing this summit is that I'm
Mhm,
speaking to people from all walks of life,
mhm.
and they're all coming to the same kind of conclusions. And you've just reminded me that I spoke with an amazing um, social scientist, futurist, coming from a background of finance and economics yesterday, Thomas Bjorkman. His speech is on the summit. And he's come from this very researched economic model of looking at the world. He's fascinating. Watch
Right.
for everyone watching. Listen to Thomas, and I might put him on before you. It's interesting. The point of I'm talking about him now is because at the end, I asked him what's
Mhm.
one thing that people can do, and where do we start? And he said we have to start by healing ourselves, and we have to then start to help healing one another. And it was so I was a bit surprised that those words came from him. And
Yep.
now I'm hearing them from you. I've got goosebumps because there's a theme here, right? So I just
Oh,
wanted to share
absolutely.
that there's a theme, and it's fascinating, and we're going to be able to see it through this summit. But what I'd like to ask you, Terry, is for everybody listening who's listening to your story and identifying and is able to see themselves somewhere in there, or
Mhm,
recognizing at some level you can identify with the I'm not worthy to receive part.
mhm.
Where do they start? What do they do? When they come and see you, where do you start?
Well, the first thing is starting to recognize of where we're performing. If you are not saying what you want, if you're living a lie about who you really are, if you're hiding parts of yourself, you're performing. If you're not asking for what you want, you're performing. If you're staying in a marriage that doesn't love and value you, you're still trying to seek love outside of yourself. You're not trusting. So we've got to get out of this mindset of the old paradigm of I have to perform to win love, success, and happiness. I mean, you hear it all the time, oh, they're performing so well, they're doing this. And if you think about
Yeah,
careers, right? And it's the absolute worst thing that we can do because we get in this mindset of lack. When you're performing, you're actually in a state of lack. And what you're saying is, I'm not worthy of being loved, nurtured, and supported simply for being me.
yeah,
So we want to get out of performance mode. And the way we start doing that is by one, committing to unconditional love. That's what I did when I shifted my mindset and I knew I wanted to do something different. I ended up in the energy school, but then I ended up reading a book on unconditional love. And I remember making that commitment. And
mm,
when I made that commitment, all of a sudden I'm meditating and little Terry, the little 5-year-old inside of me, shows up.
right.
Well, I started sobbing, Sally. I mean, "Whoa." And I heard in my ear, get up and write this. This is the beginning of your book. Well,
Yeah,
that was the beginning of my first book, Message Sent. Okay. So what I began doing is I started interjecting the tools that I'd learned in the healing school with loving this little kid. And the way I was shown is, and I do this still to this day, every single day if I react to anything, but particularly in that book of Message Sent, which is a bunch of little stories, is that I would watch my outer world. I would pay attention to how I was reacting. And I
mm,
would allow my outer world instead of feeling like a victim, because when we're in that mentality of lack, we're in victim mentality. So instead of being in victim mentality, I chose empowerment mentality, which was choosing love. So I would pay attention to my outer world. I would then allow that outer world, whatever the trigger was, to take me within and go deep, deep, deep into my feelings, allowing myself to go just sink into my subconscious mind. And as I sunk in, I would then look at the little girl inside of me and say, hey, little Terri, what's hurting? What's going on with you? Why are you reacting to this situation like this?
Mm-hmm.
And I would have this loving, compassionate, connected conversation with this child. So now she was starting to feel seen. She was starting to feel heard. She was starting to feel valued. And because I was doing all of those things, I was starting to make her feel worthy, right? I was becoming this divine mother to little Mary. And in that connection, she started feeling safe. A lot of times we stay in the we play small and we don't give ourselves permission to break the rules because we want to be safe. Even though a lot of times, I mean, you think about somebody in domestic abuse, they stay in it because that's what they know, right? In their mind, it's like, oh, this is what I have to do, to survive. And no, you don't, right? So I just kept talking to little Terri and I would ask her, what are you feeling? What is the belief you're holding on to? Because remembering that our thoughts create the feelings and the feelings emit a vibration. And that whatever vibration you're sending out is what you're going to attract to you. So I knew that if my outer world was showing up and it felt hard or it felt like punishment or it didn't feel loving and I was reacting and not being neutral, because our goal is to be neutral. But if I was reacting, I had to backtrack. Okay, so my feelings are here and they're going to take me to the belief. So, where we have thoughts, create feelings, create a vibration, and you attract that. So now I was backtracking, going, okay, here's the attraction. Here's the feeling. Now what's the belief? So I'm just going back down, right? And so as I did that, and I would talk to little Terri, I would say, what's hurting? And, what's the belief you're holding on to? So I'd allow now the feelings to take me further and further and further back. Now, I do a lot of energy tools when I'm doing this stuff. I'll be talking to the little girl inside of me. And if I see energy, I'll push the energy out and visualize it going into a rose. And then I'll allow that rose to go out and blow it up into confetti out into the universe so that it releases the energy back with love. And I'll sit there and I'll ask her, so what is your truth? Now, here's something to think about. When you are suffering because of a belief, it is not your truth.
Mm-hmm.
Your truth is not going to create suffering for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So if you're playing these mind games and you're having all of these feelings and you are buying into the mind chatter that is going on inside of you and it's causing pain and suffering, then your first clue is that is not the truth.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Right? If it's causing you to suffer, it is not the truth. So that's when you say, I'm going to get rid of this belief. I'm letting it go. And you talk to that little kid, and I always act like she's sitting right here. That's why I'm looking down. And I'll say, what is your truth? And so, for instance, maybe going back, if I had done this when I was in the television industry, okay?
Yep.
There was one gig that I was up for, and it was kind of like an Entertainment Tonight. I don't know if you guys get that where you are, but it was a huge show here for years, and it's still big. But back then it was Mary Hart. She had curly hair and she had this certain look. Well, the show, it came down between me and another girl who eventually ended up being one of the hosts on Entertainment Tonight. And they had told me all along it was mine. It was a new pilot. Then at the last minute, they said, no, you're too much like Mary Hart. They wanted a fresher look. I'm like, oh my gosh, because I wasn't being myself.
Yeah.
Now, I took it very personally back then. And I saw my outer world as rejecting me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I had gone back, and I've never actually done this with myself regarding this particular situation, so I'll just kind of play it out right here, okay?
Right.
So if I were to look at little Terri and I would say, what is hurting right now? And she would say, well, they don't like me. I wasn't good enough. And I would say, well, is that really the truth? What was going on here? And she says, well, I was trying to be like Mary Hart, and Mary Hart's so successful, and I thought that's what I needed to do. And I said, oh, so what's the belief? And she says, well, I thought I had to be like the successful person to have success.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, That's not the truth, honey. The truth is you just need to be you.
Yes.
Clear this out. Okay. And now I've become the divine parent to her, and I've given her permission to stand in her truth. And I said, now, what is your truth? And she said, well, I'm different than Mary Hart. Well, how are you different? Well, and then she starts telling me all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I really get it. Look what you bring to the table. Well, now all of a sudden I'm feeling her truth. And I say, okay, so now how can I love you so that you really own this? And she might say, well, I don't want to act like Mary. I don't want to do it just like Mary. I want to be a little bit sassier. I want to be a little bit less perfect, whatever that is. And so the next step would be for me to say, as I've asked her, what do you need from me to love you and let you really stand in your truth, is to then take action with that. So if I'd gone on an audition back then, I wouldn't have gone in as Mary Hart, right?
Yeah.
I'd gone in as, back then it was Terri Utley. I'd gone in as Terri Utley and like, this is me.
Yep.
I'm a little bit sassy. I'm the one who talks about drinking beer and dipping skull in the back of a pickup truck, right? That's who I am.
Yep.
I was trying to be perfect and fit the facade of Mary Hart, but really in reality, I'm very different than that.
Yes.
And so over the years, I've learned that, right? I've learned that I can be fun. I can be sassy. I can be a little raunchy if I really feel like it, and that's all good.
Yeah.
So that would be the process. And so what I've really done then is I've now made this child inside of me feel worthy.
Yeah.
I've made her feel loved and nurtured.
Yeah.
And especially as I take action by listening to her, what do you need from me? And releasing the energy that I've been holding on to. And I crossed the divide of lack. So where I was feeling at a low worthiness quotient and life was feeling hard because not getting that job was a mirror to me about what I deserved, right? Because that was showing me, I had a belief that I had to be something different than myself to get that kind of job. And so the job didn't show up, right? Because that's not the truth. So by doing this and by loving that little girl, I started crossing the divide of lack and feeling worthy. Okay, that's what I would have done back then. Now, I didn't do that back then, but that's what I know to be true if I had done it. Now, as far as now, when I started following the breadcrumbs of my work, okay, when I started following the breadcrumbs and taking classes, I had no idea I could write. I had no idea that I could move energy with my hands. I had no idea that I could help people heal their energy blocks of what was keeping them stuck from really receiving the life they want. I had no idea. But it was through making this inner connection and loving myself into alignment that I really started finding my life calling and my purpose. And I started feeling fulfilled, right? I started feeling like, oh, this was the love I was seeking all along. I was craving connection. I was craving that deep, deep love that feels so glorious. I couldn't find it out here.
Yeah.
I had to find it by making the connection here. And now here's the next step that came for me as I was really loving this little girl. I now felt so connected and so loved, and she was trusting me, and I was no longer being in a fetal position, that my world opened up, and I really started allowing the universe to support me. I work with guides. I work with Michael the Archangel. He was the first one who showed up for me as a healing master, and I didn't even know. I mean, I just said, who are you? And it says Michael. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then my girlfriend, who was Catholic, said, don't you find it interesting? Because Michael, the movie, came out back then with John Travolta, and I kept going to see it. She says, don't you find it weird that you keep going to see this movie and your healing master is Michael? And I went, oh, I'm working with the Archangel Michael. I had no idea because I didn't know much about archangels. So he started as one of my guides, and I could tell you so many miraculous stories of him showing up in my life and just really allowing myself to be in a state of surrender and allowing that love to show up. So this sounds kind of blasphemous for anybody who's religious, but I started thinking of it as my own little holy trinity. Me as the divine mother, my inner child, and God. And God being the universal energy of love, and all my guides who support me, and this powerful, omniscient, is that the right word? We're this energy that we are all a part of. And so by creating my own little trinity, my holy trinity here, I started feeling wholeness. And
Mm.
I got off that hamster wheel and I quit performing. I mean, I still have my moments, right? We're human,
Mhm.
but things are, but it goes deeper,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like when you look at all the divide we've been having in our country, the political divide, and then of course the pandemic and everything that's been going on, it is so many of us are in lack. And I found myself being triggered by listening to people who would say something that maybe disagreed with my political views or whatever. And I'd find myself going, whoa, and pulling away. And then I was like, wait, this is not who I am. This is what I used to do.
Uh-huh.
And I started recognizing that everybody that was reacting in any way that wasn't just neutral, their worthiness was getting triggered. Because if you're in survival, if you're thinking, well, that person who is saying something different than I am, they're actually making me feel unsafe,
Yeah.
right? They're taking away my bubble.
Yeah.
And so if we're feeling unsafe, we have to say, why am I not trusting? Why am I not trusting that the universe has my back? Why am I not trusting that God and the angels and all these guides are going to show up for me? And it's because of our lack of self-worth, which is based in the subconscious mind. So we're in this amazing opportunity right now that's going on in the world to really go deep into loving ourselves. And like you were referring to the gentleman that you interviewed, that he said it starts with us first. It absolutely has to start with us. And then he said, then and it helps other people heal. Well, that's exactly what I saw with my family.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
I began healing, my late husband said to me, I was married for 17 years and then he passed away. And he said to me, he says, I feel better in my skin than I've ever felt. And I said, why? And he goes, you forced me to it. And I said, how? He said, when you quit caretaking me to find yourself, it forced me to find myself, and I feel better in my skin than I've ever felt.
Yeah. Wow.
What he meant by that was when I was caretaking him, I was performing. When I
Yeah.
was trying to make sure everything was taken care of and all his emotions were going to be okay and that mine didn't matter,
Mm.
I was clipping his wings,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? I was clipping his wings. So we have to understand that when we love ourselves, especially as women, you talked about my community, women leaders of love, we become leaders of love so that we become that expression. We become messengers of God. When we're in that deep connection, when we are coming from a space of a high worthiness quotient, we're actually putting God first, which is that divinity inside of us, so that we become that expression of love for others to watch and learn. And so
Yeah.
as we get into this high worthiness quotient, we're now attracting abundance to us, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so we're, those same level energies over here in the low worthiness quotient, we're attracting things that feel hard. And when we love ourselves and raise our worthiness quotient, we open up to receive so that we attract miracles. It's amazing.
Yes. And I mean, we've spoken before, and we were speaking about how this is some mothers, when we're used to doing all the caretaking and putting our needs aside because that's what we think we should do and that's what we think we're doing the right thing,
Right.
it can feel selfish. Or yes, I get the self-love thing, but but that means that this is gonna, I'm not going to be able to do my best with my children or my husband or my parents or my parents-in-law or my, all the people we serve. But we were speaking about how actually when you step into your own self-worthiness, you're facilitating your children and your family, just as you've beautifully illustrated with your late husband. We're facilitating them too, because they're sitting and watching and witnessing, even maybe not on a level, but we're leading them with love and light. So it's not, if you have that voice of, well, it's a bit selfish, I don't have the time, it's what you have to do. You have to start with yourselves. It's putting the oxygen mask on first, isn't it?
Yes. Right. But here's the deal, is that we've been hearing put on the oxygen mask for a while now, right? But what people don't understand is if you want to create something in your life, it has a vibration here. And you may be saying, well, I am going to match that vibration, because we have to match our energy to what we want so that we can create it. This is what people are missing.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So if we're saying, okay, this is what I want to create. I want to create a more peaceful household. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to have more joy in my life. Da, 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 da. And we have this vision that holds this vibration, and we're taking these tiny steps to get there. But if we have any guilt, if we have any subconscious beliefs that tell us we're bad, that we're wrong, that we don't deserve forgiveness, or that it could be anything, right? I mean, I really like to go deep into the subconscious mind to see what we're holding on to.
Yes.
If we're doing that, or if we even just have a belief that's subconscious, that's been handed down through the generations, that says it's not okay to receive, even though we're saying it's okay to receive. But if we have anything inside of us that says no, and we're coming from guilt, our vibration is going to be here, and
Yeah.
we're trying to get here.
Yeah.
And we're going to be constantly saying, what's wrong with me? So what does that do? That now puts us back on that hamster wheel of thinking, well, it's not working.
Yeah.
Now I got to go work harder. No, you need to love yourself more. That's the difference. You need to let go of the guilt. You need to let go of the shame.
Yeah. And I think you said limiting beliefs there. And that's what it is for me. It's, cutting through the stuff. It's going deep within to find those limiting beliefs. They're beliefs that you have from childhood that are limiting you. They're limiting you in obtaining what you want. They're limiting you in evolving. They're limiting you in having the life that you want. So the process that you took us through is so powerful. I can't thank you enough for that, because it was so clear, and it's so powerful, going from the thoughts to the feelings and digging into the belief, and then nurturing the inner child in a way to integrate that. I can see that would be powerful for trauma. I mean, hardcore trauma issues as a child, that would work as an integration process. But also, as you said, it's there's a spectrum of what we can use this for, from extreme trauma where we need to integrate and love ourselves and do that process, but also, as you explained, going through our everyday life, watching, observing, where am I acting, and then going into the process. And I think that's the thing that we miss often. We know we need to do it when there's a big thing we know we're suppressing, but it's in the little everyday. Who are we when we're not paying attention to who we're being? And that's how we have to start, because that's how we're showing up. Our subconscious thoughts and feelings, and that loop that you mentioned makes us who we are, and that makes our reality. So stopping, I think that's just brilliant, to be able to integrate that process into the little everyday things. So I think, as a practical tip, how do we can only do that when we're remembering to do it, right? So it starts with awareness. So did you start with, I often talk, people say, where do you start when we're starting self-awareness practices? When should I start? And I always try and encourage people to set reminders to do it, or anchor it to something. But do it when you're brushing your teeth, do it when you walk through a doorway, wear an elastic band and twang it every time you catch yourself acting up. Whatever it is, to start this process, the habit, the skill of starting to become self-aware, so that you remember to do the process in the moment. Do you have anything to say on that? Any tips, or how did you start remembering to do it?
Absolutely. For me, the way it began was I would sit in meditation, because, I said I was meditating and little Terri showed up. I wasn't asking about inner child stuff, nothing. And I've had people say to me, oh, I've done inner child work. And I'll ask them, well, are you struggling? Or you feel really whole and complete? Because you don't ever stop, right? This is about being the divine mother or the divine father to that child inside of you that is so nurturing. So for me, when she showed up that way, I would talk to her. I would visualize her sitting in the seat next to me in the car, and I would just get to know her. I would, or, nowadays you might want to have her in the back seat. She was 5 years old, but in my mind, she's sitting next to me, and I would sit there and talk to her and ask her how she feels. What is she like? Just getting to know her, because when we've been raised to be good and we're raised to suppress ourselves, half the time we don't even know what we want or how we feel. So just starting that conversation. one of the things that I really, really love to do is to journal to my inner child.
Yeah.
And yeah, and what I do is I'll start with my normal hand of writing. If I'm reacting to something in the outer world, I'll just start writing. And when I'm ready to ask her a question, I switch the pen to the other hand, which takes you to your intuitive mind.
Yeah.
It's a
Love
really,
that
really
thing.
powerful tool. So my journals look nice cursive, and then it looks like chicken scratch, and you can always know who I'm talking to, because it's like on the child's hand, there's no grammar, there's no punctuation there, it looks horrible. We have to let go of everything we learned in school, and it becomes a conscious flow of thought and from your intuitive mind. That to me has been so, so powerful.
Mm,
Now I'm at a place in my life after 20 something years of doing this, right?
mm.
Where I just, like this morning, I had a radio show to do. And there's always that sense of, okay, is everything going to go smoothly? You know, you do that because you want it to be good for yourself. You want it to be good for the people who have invited you on. And I get more concerned about technical difficulties than anything. You know, are we going to have a glitch or something like that? Because nowadays everything's so remote. But what I do is I pull little Terri up on my lap and I say to her, I love you. And no matter what goes down today, I've got your back, babe. I've got your back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she knows that she's not going to be abandoned. See, what happens so often is that when something happens, the adult leaves the room and the little child is left there going, oh my gosh, how do I handle this? And we wonder, why are we so emotional? It's because the adult has no connection to the inner child, and the inner child is standing there feeling like she has to figure out everything by herself. But when we come back in as the adult and scoop that child up and say, I love you and I've got your back, what's hurting, we now have become that wise parent, that divine parent. And we use our tools to get grounded. We open up, we connect to the universe, we allow energy to flow through us. And that's what I do on a daily basis. Anyway, you were asking about that, but we use these tools in a moment of crisis, or for me, I do it every single day. I had a woman say to me one day, she said, this is when I was writing The Enlightened Mom, and I had this big aha, and I was sharing with her what had happened. And she says, oh my gosh, Terri, she goes, you get the most profound answers. I wish I could do that. And I said, you know how you go to the gym every day and you exercise your muscles? I said, I do that every day
Yeah.
with my inner work.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, doing this inner parenting is so huge, because it has raised my worthiness so much that when I was sick, okay, we talk about health. She was working out all the time. When I was sick with a weird disease called Chiari malformation, and I thought I was going to have a barbaric surgery here in the US, and I just kept loving myself deeper for 2 years, and I asked for a kinder, gentler way. I went to the mall the next day, started talking to a woman who told me about her son who had this weird disease called Chiari malformation. And she proceeded to tell me about a doctor in Spain.
Wow. There you go.
Your whole life, yeah, your whole life shifts when you raise your worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
When you take time each day to sit down and what I call getting grounded, just allowing yourself to bring in the light of the universe, the light of love, let it flood through your body, bringing you immediately into a higher vibration. And then you pull that little kid up on your lap and you create a conversation with her. If there's something going on in your life that doesn't feel loving and kind, you see it as a gift. You say, thank you, universe. Thank you for having this show up in my life. Instead of being in victim mentality, you're now seeing it as an opportunity to go deeper into loving this little kid. And then that's when you go back and you say, okay, what's hurting? And what is your truth? And how can I love you?
Mm.
And by doing that, you raise your worthiness so that you can shift the vibration immediately and your world changes. I mean, I've seen things change just like that. I could have stayed in resistance and been upset about a situation. but instead immediately started giving thanks for the gift, immediately started getting grounded and allowing the energy to flood through me, and then started talking to that little kid to find out what was the belief that was being triggered, released it, shifted my energy. And I'm not kidding, Sally. I've seen within moments the things around me shift because I shift.
Yeah.
It can happen that quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So absolutely, in our work, in Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, we sometimes call it changing boxes. You've just shifted timelines, you've changed your box.
Yeah.
You've been an alternative, you know, you've shifted timelines because you're in a different place, literally.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of time, Terri, and your time. I know it's really late though, but I wanted to say this. When you were talking about the tech issues, before you and I went live, we had a few tech issues. You live in the mountains, the internet's, not as reliable. And we had a few tech issues. And in the end, we resolved everything in 3D. We went to 5D and we just asked for some assistance up there, which sorted it out. But what's happened during this interview is it's not been perfect, but it is perfect because we've heard your voice perfectly. But what happens occasionally is your screen, the pixels go all fuddy. But what it means, it makes you more ethereal. It just gives you beautiful glow around you. So it is perfect. Every time it's happened, I've been listening to what you're saying and observing what's happening, and it's perfect. I'm going to send you this recording so you can see what I mean. But it is perfect.
I appreciate that you feel that way, because what's so beautiful about the pandemic, this is just my thought real quickly, is that when everything started going home for interviews, I mean, we've been doing this remote stuff for ages, right? With summits and things like that. But when everything went home and you started seeing late night talk show hosts giving, their monologues from their basement with their kids crawling across their lap, what's so beautiful about it is that there's such a permission level for things not to be perfect anymore.
And that's okay. You're so right. You're so right. Remember you're the hoo-ha of the guy who was reporting and his kids wheeled, and it was a big thing, and now everything goes. We hear stories all the time. Partner in the shower reflected behind, and pajama bottoms viewing in the interview. Anyway, I want to ask you a final question, Terri. You've given us so much. You've given us so much. You've given us so many practical tips as well that you may already have answered this question, so that's okay too. But I'm going to ask it anyway because I'm asking everybody. What is one thing, or it could be a few things, but what's one thing that if I had to ask you to hone on it, that people could do now to start to up their worthiness quotient? What's one thing they could do now?
Stop the performance immediately. Pay attention to when you're performing. Pay attention to your feelings, because if you're not in a loving, joyful place, or at least neutral, you're probably performing, and it's your sign to go within and heal.
Yeah, beautiful. And you've reminded me of something. I don't mean to jump on, but you said it earlier that I want to just re-emphasize. You said, if it's causing you suffering, it's not your truth.
It's not your truth. Pay attention to your outer world. If it is causing you any kind of pain, any kind of feelings of I'm not enough, or anger, resentment, frustration, hopelessness, depression, sadness, whatever those lower level energies are, then instead of seeing it as this is happening to me and feeling that much worse about your life, say this is happening for me, because it's telling me stop the performance. It's telling you love yourself unconditionally. Take a stand for that little kid inside of you and nurture her or him into alignment with who you are and the way you were created. That's the key.
Yeah, so wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's late for you. Thank you for waiting up for us. You've had a long day. And I know also that you're going to give everybody here, you're so generous in every way, but you're going to give everybody here access to your worthiness quotient quiz. So thank you so much for that. We'll drop it in the link just below this video. So thank you for everything, Terri. It's been an absolute pleasure. Have a good night, and we will
Thank
speak
you so
soon.
much, Shelly, and thank you for all you're doing and for all the other healers who've been a part of this and for all of you who showed up, because you're making a difference. You're being messengers of love just by showing up to listen to these calls.
Beautiful. Thank you.